The wedding invitation arrived on a Tuesday, sliding under my apartment door like a blade, seeking a vital organ. Cream cardstock, gold embossing, and my sister's looping handwriting announcing her marriage to Kyle. My Kyle. The man I had spent 3 years building a life with, supporting him through business school, only for him to decide he wanted my sister instead. I stood in my cramped studio apartment, the envelope trembling in my hands. I wondered how a person could feel so hollow and yet so heavy at the same time. The radiator clanked and hissed, struggling against the February cold that seeped through the single-pane windows. Outside, the city rumbled with its usual indifference: car horns, distant sirens, the metallic screech of the subway 2 blocks away. Inside, my world consisted of mismatched furniture from thrift stores, a hot plate that only worked on the high setting, and the lingering scent of the Indian restaurant downstairs that had permanently infused itself into my clothes. I was invisible here. Invisible everywhere, really. I was a 25-year-old African-American woman working as a nurse's aide at one of the city's most underfunded hospitals. I was the one they called when no one else wanted a shift. The one who cleaned bedpans and changed linens while the actual nurses took their breaks. I was the responsible one, the boring one, the one who never caused problems or demanded attention. Unlike Jasmine, my sister had always been the sun, and I had learned early to orbit quietly, content with reflected light. When she had shown up at the apartment Kyle and I shared, crying about some failed audition, I had let her stay on our couch. When she needed money, I gave it to her from my meager savings. When she started wearing my clothes and using my makeup, I said nothing. I should have known she would want him, too. The invitation listed the venue: Jungsik, an upscale modern restaurant in Manhattan that I could never afford, even if I saved for a year. The wedding was in 2 weeks. They wanted me there. Jasmine had scrawled a note on the back in her careless script: "Please come, sis. It wouldn't be the same without you. I know things are complicated, but I love you." I crumpled the invitation and threw it in the trash, but the words had already burrowed under my skin. Complicated. She had slept with my boyfriend in our bed while I was working a double shift. When I came home early with the flu, I found them tangled in sheets I had washed that morning. The look on Kyle's face hadn't been guilt. It had been relief. Like he had been waiting for permission to stop pretending. "Amara, this isn't. It just happened," he had said, scrambling for his clothes while Jasmine had the audacity to look tearful and beautiful in my old university t-shirt. I had moved out that night with 2 suitcases and what remained of my dignity. That was 4 months ago. Now, I pulled a double shift at the hospital. My feet ached in cheap sneakers that had worn through at the heels. Mrs. Patterson in room 412 had vomited on me twice. A teenage overdose victim had coded and died despite our efforts, and I had to comfort his mother while still smelling like someone else's sickness. The attending physician hadn't learned my name in the 6 months I'd worked there. He just called me you or hey. By the time I stumbled out into the March night, I was so tired I could barely feel the cold. The subway would take 40 minutes. I couldn't afford a cab, but there was a bus that ran crosstown. If I hurried, I could catch the 11:15. I ran. The bus doors were closing when I reached them. The driver, bored and indifferent, opened them with a hydraulic sigh. I climbed aboard, fumbling for my pass with numb fingers, and collapsed into a seat near the back. The bus smelled like wet wool and stale fast food. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow. There were maybe 6 other passengers, all of them looking as exhausted as I felt, all of us invisible to each other. I leaned my head against the cold window and closed my eyes. The bus lurched forward, and I let the motion rock me into a half-sleep, that dangerous space where thoughts become dreams and memories bleed into the present. I saw Kyle's face, Jasmine's tears, my mother's disappointed expression when I told her I wouldn't be coming to Sunday dinners anymore. "You're being dramatic, Amara," she had said. "Jasmine didn't mean to hurt you. These things just happen. You need to learn to forgive." I had hung up without responding. The bus jerked to a stop, and my eyes snapped open. We weren't at my stop. We were nowhere near my stop. The driver stood looking nervous as 2 men in dark suits boarded through the front door. Everything about them screamed danger. They moved like predators, their eyes scanning the bus with the kind of cold assessment that made my spine straighten. One was older, maybe mid-40s, with silver threading through his dark hair and a scar that cut through his left eyebrow. The other was younger, built like he spent his life in a gym, with tattooed hands and a jaw that could cut glass. Behind them, through the open door, I could see a black SUV idling at the curb, windows tinted so dark they looked like voids. "Everyone off," the older one said. His voice was quiet, almost gentle, but it carried the weight of absolute authority.
Now.
The other passengers scrambled to comply, gathering their belongings and hurrying past the two men like scared rabbits. I sat frozen, my exhausted brain struggling to process what was happening. "You too, sweetheart," the older one said, looking directly at me. I stood on shaking legs, my nurse's bag clutched to my chest like a shield. As I moved down the aisle, the younger one's eyes tracked me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. I kept my gaze down, trying to make myself even smaller, more invisible. I was almost to the door when it happened. My foot caught on something, a bag strap, maybe, or just my own clumsy exhaustion, and I pitched forward. My bag went flying, its contents scattering across the bus floor: tampons, a half-eaten granola bar, my ancient iPod, my work badge, and, mortifyingly, the crumpled wedding invitation that I had apparently shoved into my bag instead of leaving it in the trash. I hit the floor hard, palms stinging, face burning with humiliation. "Damn it," I muttered, scrambling to gather my things before these dangerous men lost patience. But then there were hands on my arms, strong, careful hands helping me up. "Easy," a voice said. It wasn't the older man or the younger one. It was someone else entirely. I looked up, and the world tilted. He was older than me, perhaps early 40s, and devastatingly handsome in a severe, commanding way. His hair was jet black, swept back from a face that seemed carved from marble. High, sharp cheekbones, monolid eyes that held a depth of intelligence and ruthlessness, and a mouth that looked like it rarely smiled. He was Korean, and he radiated a power that made the air in the bus feel thin. He wore a bespoke black Mafia suit that fit his broad shoulders perfectly, and a crisp white collared shirt open at the neck, revealing smooth, tan skin. The scent of him hit me like a wave: sandalwood, expensive tobacco, and something cold like winter rain. "Are you hurt?" he asked. His voice was deep, resonant, and accented with a precise, elegant cadence. "I'm fine," I managed, my voice coming out smaller than I intended.
"I'm sorry."
"I didn't mean to." "Collecting her things, June," he said, cutting me off. The younger man immediately crouched to gather my scattered belongings. I watched in stunned silence as this dangerous-looking man carefully picked up my tampons and granola bar and work badge without a trace of judgment. He even smoothed out the crumpled wedding invitation before placing everything back into my bag. The powerful man, clearly the leader, clearly a Korean mafia boss, still hadn't let go of my arms. His eyes, dark as obsidian, were studying my face with an intensity that made my breath catch. "What is your name?" he asked. I should have lied. Every instinct I possessed screamed at me to lie, to run. "Amara," I whispered instead. Something flickered in his dark eyes. Recognition. "Amara," he repeated, testing the weight of it. "You work at Mount Sinai?" He had seen my badge. "Yes." "Night shift?"
"Yes."
"And you take the bus home alone at midnight?" There was something dangerous in his tone now. "I can't afford anything else," I said, hating how defensive I sounded. His jaw tightened. "That changes tonight. June, take her home."
"What?"
"No, I can't." "You can, and you will." His voice went from velvet to steel. "Do you have any idea what kind of neighborhood you are about to walk through at this hour? Looking like that." "Looking like what?" "Like a tired, invisible nobody." He didn't answer. He just stood there, his grip firm but not painful. "I don't even know you," I said weakly. His mouth curved then, just slightly. It wasn't quite a smile. It was something darker, more possessive. "No," he agreed. "Not yet." June handed me my bag. The Korean mafia boss watched me, and I felt trapped, not by force, but by the sheer weight of his attention. "The SUV or the bus, Samara," he said softly. "Choose." I looked at the empty bus, at the nervous driver who wouldn't meet my eyes, and then at the warm, expensive-looking SUV. I thought about my tiny apartment, the long walk, the shadows between streetlights. "The SUV," I whispered. "Good girl." The words sent a shiver down my spine. We moved to the vehicle. The interior was all black leather and tinted windows. I slid into the back seat, and the man in the black Mafia suit climbed in beside me. Close enough that I could feel his heat, far enough that we weren't touching. "Where do you live?" he asked. I gave him my address. He spoke in rapid Korean to the driver, who nodded. Then those dark eyes were back on me. He shrugged out of his suit jacket and draped it over my shoulders. It was heavy, warm, and smelled intoxicatingly of him. "Thank you," I murmured. "My name is Minho," he said unexpectedly.
Kang Minho.
I nodded, clutching his jacket. When we pulled up to my building, he looked at the dilapidated entrance with disdain. "5th floor," I said. "No elevator." "Criminal," he murmured. As I climbed out, he rolled down his window. "Amara," he said, "that invitation in your bag. The wedding." My stomach dropped. "How did you?" "Don't go," he said. "It wasn't a suggestion. Whatever they are to you, whoever he is, you are worth more than crawling back to witness their happiness." The window rolled up, and the SUV pulled away, leaving me standing in the cold with questions I couldn't answer.
I didn't sleep that night.
I sat on my threadbare couch with his jacket draped across my lap, turning the business card he had slipped into the pocket over and over. Kong Industries, and a personal number. The next morning, I received a text from my supervisor. "Someone made a generous donation to the hospital. You're covered for the week with full pay."
Rest.
My hands went numb. I knew exactly who had done this. I spent the morning cleaning, trying to keep my mind off the impossible situation. By 2 p.m., there was a knock at my door. Through the peephole, I saw June. He stood in my dingy hallway, looking like he had stepped out of a fashion magazine. I opened the door. "Miss Amara," he said with a polite bow. "Chairman Kong requests your presence for lunch. Chairman Kong Min-ho, the Korean Mafia boss." "I can't go like this," I said, gesturing to my oversized sweater and leggings. "The chairman does not care what you wear," June replied. "But if you wish to change, I will wait." I changed into black jeans and a cream sweater. Ironically, one Jasmine had left behind. I brushed my long black hair until it shone and applied minimal makeup. I grabbed his jacket to return it. The ride to the restaurant was silent. We arrived at Jungsik, the very same venue listed on the wedding invitation. My heart hammered against my ribs. The restaurant was empty. Every table was set with silver and crystal, but there were no other diners. Minho sat at a table by the window, the afternoon light highlighting the sharp angles of his face. He stood when he saw me. "Amara," he said, his voice a low rumble. "You came. Did I have a choice?" "There is always a choice." He pulled out a chair for me. We sat. He poured tea from a ceramic pot. "You brought my jacket. I was returning it. Keep it. I can't accept expensive gifts from strangers." "We are not strangers, Samara. I know you. You don't know me. You picked me up off a bus floor." Minho took a sip of his tea, his eyes locking onto mine. "I know you worked 2 jobs to put Kyle through business school. I know you forgave him when he forgot your birthday 2 years in a row. I know you held him when he cried about his father being a monster, and I know you stepped aside with grace when he betrayed you for your sister." I froze. The room suddenly felt very cold. "How do you know Kyle?" Minho set his cup down with a deliberate clink. "Because Kyle is my son." The air left my lungs. "What?" "His name is Kong Kyle." Or it was before he decided to change it to something more palatable for his corporate friends. "He is my son." I stared at the man before me. The resemblance was there, the sharp jaw, the eyes. But where Kyle was soft and weak, Minho was hard and unyielding. Kyle was a boy, this was a king. A Korean mafia boss. "You're the monster," I whispered, remembering Kyle's complaints about his controlling, dangerous father. Min-ho didn't flinch. I am a man who demands loyalty and honor. My son has neither. He left my house, left my protection, to play at being a legitimate businessman. And in doing so, he has become a thief and a liar. Why are you telling me this? Because I have watched you for 3 years, Samara. I had men watching Kyle to ensure he didn't get himself killed, which means they were watching you. I saw your loyalty. I saw your strength. I saw a woman of immense value wasting herself on a boy who could not appreciate her. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. His skin was rough, calloused, warm. He invited you to this wedding to humiliate you, Min-ho said, his voice dropping to a growl, to show off his prize. He does not love your sister. He is marrying her because he thinks it solidifies his new American identity. He is using her, just as he used you. Tears burned my eyes. Why do you care? Because you fell on that bus, he said simply. And when you looked up at me, I realized I was tired of watching from the shadows. I was tired of seeing my son break something precious. So what happens now? Now, Min-ho said, leaning back, you let me take care of you. For 1 week.
You stay with me.
You let me show you what it feels like to be respected, to be seen. And then we crash a wedding. I accepted. God help me, I accepted. I moved into his penthouse loft in Brooklyn that evening. It was a fortress of glass and steel, overlooking the skyline. Min-ho gave me a room with a view that made me weep and a closet filled with clothes in my size, rich fabrics, vibrant colors that complemented my dark skin, silk pajamas, cashmere coats.
How?
I asked, running my hand over an emerald green dress. I pay attention, was all he said. The week passed in a blur. Min-ho was busy during the days, running his empire, and I had no doubt it was an empire built on blood and steel. He was a Korean Mafia boss, after all. I saw the way men bowed to him, the way he spoke in hushed, lethal tones on the phone. But with me, he was gentle. He took me to art galleries. He took me to a jazz club in Harlem where he sat with his arm around my chair, watching me listen to the music with a look of utter fascination on his face. He fed me Korean barbecue, cooking the meat himself at the table, placing the choicest cuts in my bowl. Eat, he would say. You are too thin. We talked. I told him about nursing, about the pain of losing patients, about the struggle of being a black woman in a system that often overlooked me. He listened with an intensity that made me feel like the most important person in the world. You have a warrior's heart, he told me one night as we stood on the balcony. You fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. It is a noble thing. You fight, too, I said boldly. I fight for power, he corrected. For control. It is not the same. You're fighting for your son, aren't you? In your own way. He turned to look at the city. I am ending his mistakes. Before they destroy him. I Googled him that night.
Kang Min-ho.
Head of the chillingly powerful Kong syndicate. Associated with gambling, shipping, and loan sharking. The police had never been able to pin anything on him. He was a ghost.
A myth.
A monster. And I was falling in love with him. It hit me on the 5th night. We were sitting on his couch, him reading a dossier, me reading a book he had bought me. He reached out blindly and took my hand, lacing his fingers through mine without looking up. It was such a domestic, possessive gesture. I looked at our joined hands, his large, scarred hand engulfing my smaller, dark hand, and I felt a sense of belonging I had never felt with Kyle.
Mino, he whispered.
He looked up, his eyes softening. Yes, Samara. Why me? You could have anyone. He closed the file and turned to me fully. My world is dark, Amara. It is cold and transactional. Everyone wants something.
But you.
You ask for nothing. You give because it is who you are. You are the only light I have found in a very long time. He leaned in, and the air between us crackled. He smelled of whiskey and danger. I am a bad man, he murmured, his gaze dropping to my lips. But I would burn this city to the ground to keep you warm. Then burn it, I breathed. He kissed me. It wasn't hesitant. It was acclaiming. His mouth was hot and demanding, his hands tangling in my long black hair, pulling me closer until I was pressed against the hard wall of his chest. I could feel the gun in his shoulder holster, a reminder of who he was, but I didn't care. Mine, he growled against my throat. You are mine, Amara, not Kyle's.
Mine.
Yours, I gasped.
I'm yours.
He carried me to the bedroom, and that night, the Korean Mafia boss showed me the difference between a boy and a man. He worshipped my body, praising every inch of my dark skin, making me feel beautiful, powerful, and cherished. The morning of the wedding arrived with gray skies. I woke up wrapped in Minho's arms. Today, he said, kissing my shoulder. I'm nervous. Do not be. You are with me. He had a dress waiting for me. It was red, blood red, deep and vibrant. A structured bodice that showcased my curves and a slit that went up to my thigh. In my culture, red is for brides, he said, adjusting the strap. But today it is for war. He dressed in his signature black Mafia suit, but he added a blood-red pocket square to match my dress.
He looked terrifying.
He looked magnificent. We took the vintage Rolls-Royce. As we drove toward Jungsik, Minho held my hand. Kyle has been laundering money through his firm, Minho said calmly. He thinks he is clever. He is stealing from my associates to pay for his lifestyle, to pay for this wedding. My eyes widened. What are you going to do? I am going to take back what is mine. All of it.
We arrived.
The valet opened the door, and Minho stepped out. He extended a hand to me. I took it, and we walked into the lion's den. The restaurant was full. Jasmine's friends, Kyle's corporate colleagues, my mother. They were all sipping champagne, waiting for the ceremony to begin. When we walked in, the room fell silent. It started as a ripple and became a wave. People stared. They stared at Minho, whose presence was suffocatingly powerful. And they stared at me, the invisible Amara, wearing a dress that cost more than their cars, looking like a queen on the arm of a devil. I saw my mother drop her glass. It shattered, the sound echoing in the silence. Then I saw them. Kyle and Jasmine stood near the altar. Kyle looked pale, sweating in his tuxedo. Jasmine looked beautiful, but confused.
Dad.
Kyle's voice cracked. It was the voice of a scared child. Minho didn't stop walking until we were front and center. He looked at his son with cold disappointment. You invited her, Minho said, his voice projecting without effort. You invited the woman you betrayed to watch you celebrate your treachery. You thought she was weak. You thought she would come here to beg or to cry.
Kyle took a step back.
Dad, what are you doing here? This is my wedding. Is it? Minho asked. Paid for with money you stole from the erratic accounts of the Zhang family? Money you laundered through your firm? The crowd gasped. Kyle turned a ghostly white. Dad, please. Not here. You wanted to be a man, Kyle, Minho said, stepping closer. You wanted to leave my shadow. But you only proved that you are nothing without me. You have no honor. You cheat on your women. You steal from your partners. Minho turned to Jasmine. He is broke, he told her flatly. And he is under investigation by the FBI, thanks to an anonymous tip I submitted this morning. They are waiting outside. Jasmine looked from Minho to Kyle. Kyle, is this true? Kyle was shaking. I can fix it. Dad, help me. I am helping you, Minho said. I am teaching you a lesson. He turned his back on his son and looked at me. The room held its breath. You threw away a diamond, Minho said to Kyle, his hand sliding around my waist. You treated her like glass. You did not see her worth. He pulled me against him, his dark eyes blazing with possession. But I do. She is not your ex-girlfriend anymore, Kyle. She is the future Mrs. Kong. Shock rippled through the room. I looked up at him, my heart hammering. He hadn't asked me yet, not officially, but the promise was there in his eyes. We are leaving, Minho announced. The FBI will be in shortly to collect the groom. He guided me toward the exit. My mother stepped forward, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. Amara? Amara, wait. I paused. I looked at my mother, who had told me to forgive and forget. I looked at Jasmine, who was realizing her fairy tale was a nightmare. I looked at Kyle, who was sobbing as sirens began to wail in the distance. Then I looked at Minho, my Korean Mafia boss, the man who saw me. "Goodbye, Mom," I said. We walked out of the restaurant and into the cool afternoon air. The FBI agents were rushing in, but they gave Minho a wide berth. He was untouchable. We got back into the car. As the door closed, shutting out the chaos, Minho pulled me into his lap. "Did I overdo it?" he asked, a smirk playing on his lips. "You destroyed the wedding, arrested the groom, and terrified my family," I said, tracing the line of his jaw. "It was perfect." He kissed me, deep and slow. "Marry me, Amara. For real." "Is that a command, Chairman Kong?" "It is a plea," he whispered against my lips. "Be mine. Rule with me." "Yes," I said. "Yes." Everything collapsed back there in that restaurant. My old life, my sister's schemes, my ex's lies. But here, in the arms of the most dangerous man in the city, my life was just beginning.